Welcome to our fiduciary training session for 401k Retirement Plan Committee members. As a member of the committee, you are a fiduciary. You may not realize it, but you are serving a crucial role for employees of your organization. My name is Chip Hunt with PrimeTRUST Advisors. Over the last 32 years as a retirement plan advisor, my efforts have been dedicated to working alongside our retirement plan committee members and guiding them through their oversight responsibilities for 401k plans under their stewardship. Over the next 25 to 30 minutes, my aim is to better familiarize you with how this fiduciary role should be played out. I'm going to provide you with a solid framework for understanding your responsibilities, and we will explore a set of best practice standards that shape effective fiduciary oversight. ERISA. It's a term that we'll use a lot. It's an acronym for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. It forms the basis of fiduciary responsibility and related practices for operating and managing retirement plans in the modern world. It's important to point out here that yours is a role of oversight management. You are already skilled at that. Every day you surround yourself with managers, consultants, and advisors and make decisions based upon the information presented to you. In your fiduciary role, you will do much the same. Only ERISA shapes the tone for your decision making. So let's begin our journey into the heart of fiduciary responsibility. And I want to begin by providing you with some background information that I think will be instructive for understanding what ERISA's fiduciary standards are aimed to achieve, as well as that which they are aimed to prevent. To that end, let me begin by pointing out that in the world of retirement plans looks very different today from when it was passed 50 years ago. The retirement plan landscape has shifted from defined benefit pension plans to 401k plans. From a world where the company was the chief funding source of money flowing into the plan, and they decided how much to contribute to the plan and how to invest money in the plan's assets. They also too assumed all of the investment risk and all of the plan expenses. Now in a 401k world, that's all changed. Employees are now the chief funding source. They must decide how much to contribute, how to invest, and they assume all the investment risk and the lion's share of plan cost. In the view of many, employees are generally not well equipped to manage this on their own. As you can clearly surmise, the fiduciary role now carries added weight to it than it did in the past. Being ever mindful of these shifts provides meaningful insight for understanding the fiduciary role. It's instructive to grasp the original doctrines under ERISA, which include three key elements. Number one, to protect and strengthen the rights of employees. Number two, to enforce new strict fiduciary standards. And number three, to encourage the development of private retirement plans. This piece of legislation is a strong directive advocating for employee rights. The primary takeaway for retirement committees here is that you need to be extremely diligent in looking out for employees' best interest. This message sets the tone for every decision-making act you do as a committee member. You do that and you will be successful. Now, to promote and support its directives, ERISA provides an outline of basic responsibilities for plan fiduciaries, which in its very simplest forms are to operate, supervise, and manage the plan for the exclusive benefit of participants. And number two, to invest the plan's assets prudently with proper diversification to mitigate the risk of large losses. This so-called exclusive benefit concept is reinforced by two underlying principles, the duty of loyalty and the duty of care. Let's take a look at these. The duty of loyalty. For every decision a fiduciary must make, there are 4 questions you must ask yourself. Number 1, am I acting solely in the interest of employees? Number 2, am I being especially mindful of their particular needs? Number 3, am I ensuring employees are paying only reasonable and necessary costs? And number 4, am I avoiding any conflicts of interest in my decision-making role? Years ago, a client of mine called to tell me that he was firing me. He told me he was going to hire his brand new son-in-law, who was fresh out of school and brand new to the investment business. This good-natured business owner naturally felt obligated to give this young man, who had just married his daughter, a jump start on his career. This serves as an excellent example of conduct that is inconsistent with the duty of loyalty to employees. Actually, not only was it a conflict of interest principle broken, but he also too violated the duty of care, which requires the careful selection of the plan's service providers. The duty of care requires committee members to apply a so-called prudent process in your decision-making role. You will hear the term prudent throughout this presentation. Be ever mindful that this term carries special meaning for ERISA fiduciaries. When looking out for the best interest of employees, prudence requires you to follow a formal decision-making process to make informed and reasoned decisions. This means you should not be casual with your decisions. This is the area where ERISA raised the bar of conduct standards for fiduciaries. ERISA's standard of prudent decision-making is not that of a prudent layperson, that being someone with good intentions and one who may not be so familiar with these matters. But the standard is that of a prudent expert, someone who is very knowledgeable and is accustomed to dealing with these matters. This means if you, as a committee, feel that you do not possess the expertise on any matter under consideration, you are then essentially required to hire an expert to advise you on such matters. That's typically where the 401k advisor or an ERISA attorney comes in. They provide you with expert advice to help you in your decision-making capacity. As one prominent ERISA attorney noted, when selecting an advisor, however, quote, it's crucial to distinguish between an advisor with investment expertise and one with fiduciary expertise, close the quotes. The point there being, you are looking for fiduciary expertise from someone who is intimately familiar with the details of 401k plans, and that's the type of person you need guiding and helping you. The duty of care also too requires that you provide a diversified array of investment options. Well, that one should be easy. It also too requires the retirement plan committee members to ensure that their plan operates according to the provisions within all the plan documents. Now, switching to liabilities. ERISA also too outlines basic liabilities for plan committees. If a fiduciary violates his duty under ERISA, he shall be personally liable to make good to such plan any losses resulting from such breach. Now let's pause and think about what is being said here in light of what we've covered so far. Fiduciaries are the ones that are liable for investment losses resulting from breaches attributable to imprudent decisions or failure to properly diversify investments. Well, that just begs the questions. What about 401k plans where participants are making the investment decisions? What if they make bad investment decisions or they fail to properly diversify? Are fiduciaries on the hook for those bad participant decisions? Their answer is, well, yeah, maybe. Actually, that is your default position. That is, unless you have secured a special exemption from such liability. Fortunately, there is an important exemption that is available, and it's called the 404C exemption. But it's not automatic. You have to elect it. And most plans today have made that election for obvious reasons. But in order for that election, the 404C protections to be valid and enforced, there must be certain notice and disclosure requirements that must be provided to employees. Now, the good news is that typically your plan's record keeper and administrator provides these disclosures to employees for you. So you should be good here, but you will want to verify that. And the purposes of these disclosure requirements are to provide employees with sufficient information about their investment options so that they, that is the employees, they can make informed decisions and they then are now deemed to assume control over the investments. In such instances, the fiduciaries are then relieved of liability for poor investment decisions by employees. Now, we make these points not so much to alarm you, but for you to appreciate the importance of securing these valuable protections within a 401k world. However, there is another extremely important investment-related issue to be mindful of that 404C does not cover. Now, I want to make an important distinction here as I've said, 404C protects fiduciaries for poor investment decisions made by employees. However, under 404A, ERISA fiduciaries still retain the very important responsibility for prudently selecting the investment alternatives for the plan and to monitor the performance of these investments and to ensure that the fees charged to participants are reasonable and necessary. So in review, within a 404C context, fiduciaries are protected if employees make bad decisions with their investment options available to them, but retirement committee members are not protected under 404A if you did not, to begin with, follow a prudent process for selecting those investment options. So we suggest that if you've not done so, you need to begin the process of prudently selecting and monitoring the plan's investment options. If you have questions about what a prudent investment process looks like, we will cover that shortly. It's interesting to point out here that, however, you do not have to be perfect with your performance results, but you do have to be perfect in conducting your procedural prudence for the selection and monitoring of investments. The emphasis here is on process over performance. And let me just say that again. The emphasis here is on your processes over that of your actual performance. The presumption being good processes should lead to good performance over time. And absent there being any such documentation of such processes, you will likely be found liable for losses in the event of a claim of breach of fiduciary duty. As a reminder, the fiduciary role is one of oversight. That is to ensure that effective, process-oriented, reasoned decision-making is accomplished. Therefore, we've seen the development of best practice standards which provide the framework for effective fiduciary oversight management. Now, with respect to these practices, I want to emphasize here that as with anything in quality management endeavors, this is not just a check the box exercise. The results of your efforts, if done correctly, will lead to a really great plan that you provide to your employees. Also, I want to say that as you consider these practice standards, I would not focus so much on what has or has not been done in the past, as much as adopting and developing these practices going forward in order to improve your fiduciary oversight management skills in the future. Some things I am sure apparently are working well for your plan. There's no reason to blow them up just because you might not have precisely followed best practice standards. Rather, I would focus in those areas with the greatest potential risk exposure. And that usually leads us to the matter of fees or investment performance quality or adequate support documentation and retention. So let's jump in and take a look at what these best practice standards might look like. I'll give you a second to look at this list, but we're getting ready to go over all 7 of these one at a time. All right, number 1, establish and delegate decision-making authority to a retirement plan committee. Create a governance structure and bylaws, provide fiduciary training, hold periodic meetings for managing and monitoring the plan service providers, for monitoring investment performance, and the reasonableness of fees and tracking legislative and regulatory changes. You'll also too want to be discussing any sort of operational issues that may be going on with your record keeper or administrator. We typically see retirement plan committees meeting every quarter to cover this range of topics. Here's a sample of what the calendar for a year could look like for a committee. In this example, you will see that each quarter they will conduct a plan review that is looking at basic participant metrics, utilization, contribution rates, and so forth. They will also, each quarter, monitor the investment performance of all the funds in the lineup. Now, during the course of the year, they will also review other important items, such as in the first quarter, they're going to take a look at a fee review and they're going to get an update on industry trends. In quarter 2, they're conducting an investment policy statement review and providing fiduciary training. In Q3, they're looking at organizing the content and developing an education plan for employees and employee meetings. In Q4, they are reviewing regulatory changes and implications of required or optional plan changes to the plan's documents. Number 2, the selection of service providers. We spoke about prudent decision-making earlier. When selecting any of the plan's service providers, as we said, you do not want to go about that casually. You will need to follow a decision-making process similar to that which an expert in the field would use to go about evaluating and selecting a service provider. That would typically entail an analysis of your organization's needs and objectives, as well as your participants' needs and their objectives. You would then want to establish certain selection criteria. You would then want to obtain proposals and evaluate candidates to determine the best fit provider that matches or meets your selection criteria. Absent there being any really good selection criteria, I see way too many committees choose a service provider based solely on the lowest fee because that's the only thing they know how to quantify. That does not always bode well for the plan. Lastly, you will want to continuously monitor the performance of the service providers. You will want to be asking yourself periodically during these quarterly meetings, are the service providers providing accurate information and on a timely basis? Are they adequately serving the needs of our employees? Or are they constantly making mistakes or missing regulatory deadlines and not serving employees well? Fee benchmarking. Excuse me. You will want to continuously monitor fees to understand, first of all, how much are the fees that are actually being charged, whether it's either directly or indirectly. And secondly, to determine if those fees that are being charged are reasonable and necessary. You will want to conduct this exercise for all service providers where fees are being passed through to employees. You don't have to do this every year, but you do want to keep a constant eye on it. Be especially aware of hidden fees or indirect so-called revenue sharing compensation arrangements. Just because you may not see the fees directly, that doesn't mean they're not there. That's because they are often hidden, which is an all too common practice in the 401k world. You may need someone who is familiar with these arrangements to help you figure this out. It is especially important to remember that participants are usually the ones incurring plan expenses, either directly or indirectly. So you are negotiating. It's up to you to negotiate for the best interest of the employees, which is central to the fiduciary duty, as we pointed out in the very beginning. The Department of Labor, which is the government's chief enforcement authority on ERISA fiduciary compliance matters, well, these guys are very concerned about lax attitudes of retirement committees who don't bother to investigate, negotiate, or advocate for employees on fees. Just do a Google search on hidden fees in 401k plans, and you'll get a mountain load of information on this topic, and it's not pretty. So you want to be especially mindful here. Number 4, the selection and monitoring of investments. I have a number of comments here that are not actually appearing on the slide, but please listen up and hear me out for a minute before focusing on the content of this slide. When selecting investments for the plan, you don't just want to fill in all the available slots for each one of the various Morningstar investment style boxes or asset classes. Now, that's exactly where many retirement plan committees and their advisors start. Actually, I think you want to be more intentional than that. You will want to consider different philosophical approaches and strategies to investing and identifying methods for fulfilling that need. You will want to assess participant needs, their financial acumen, their social economic status, their income levels, their inherent aptitude for investing. You see, many American workers, the 401k plan is most likely their single largest asset. You want to be especially mindful of that when creating an investment menu. We suggest that you begin by creating a draft menu of investment slots of those asset classes that you do choose to include in your menu. And be sure to pay particular attention to the qualified default investment alternative. We can't spend enough time here on this topic, but you definitely want a placeholder for that. You can later work to fill each investment slot carefully with specifically selected investment products. It's like posting job descriptions. Now, referring back to the contents on the slides, to fill each of those positions for each investment slot that you've selected, you, with the help of your advisor, want to assess the investment product. Assuming it's a mutual fund, you want to investigate the quality of the organization that's sponsoring the mutual fund and the skills of the investment manager that selects the investments for the fund. We suggest you would do that by first assessing the quality of the people on the management team, their longevity, their philosophical approach to investing, their security selection process, their support staff of researchers and analysts, and assess past performance to determine if that performance consistently aligns with performance benchmarks. But let me emphasize here that one cannot assess a mutual fund manager by past performance alone. That is a rookie mistake. One advisor actually told me recently that performance is the only thing that matters. Well, that is simply not true in an ERISA world. That performance could have been the result of just plain old-fashioned good luck, or that performance could have been the result of skilled insight, research, and investment management. That's why we emphasize that management committees need to focus on assessing a manager's skills, because you're looking to achieve consistent and repeatable results for your employees. Now, after the initial fund selection is complete, you will want to monitor the performance of the various funds according to the performance criteria that you got within your investment policy statement. If you have completed your due diligence process correctly right up front, it is unlikely that you will be making frequent changes to your investment menu. If that's currently going on within your plan, That is, you are constantly making fund changes to your fund lineup year in and year out, then something's not working as it should. I've got a good idea as to what that may be, but we just don't have time in this presentation to go there. Number 5, document, 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 and retain documents and reporting to provide, excuse me, evidence of reasoned and sound decision making to support your conclusions. Think of documents as your insurance policy. Without it, you are exposed. As a simple example, if you cannot find your service contracts or fee agreements with your plan's service providers, the Department of Labor's regulators might well conclude that you have no basis for understanding your fee arrangement, much less possess the ability to determine the reasonableness of fees which you are obligated to fulfill as a fiduciary. Number 6, participant education and training. Recall that we discussed earlier, 404C protects fiduciaries from liabilities against poor investment decisions made by employees. A dedicated, ongoing participant education and communication program supports your risk management efforts by helping employees to stay informed and providing them with valuable tools and resources in their decision-making efforts. These efforts mitigate poor decision-making by employees, so you want to be proactive here. And number 7, stay informed on regulatory and legislative changes. Keep up to date with everything that's going on within the industry. And be assured that advisors, attorneys, and service providers are very generous with their supply of news on these matters. These matters are typically brought up to your attention at quarterly investment committee meetings. And finally, I would like to thank you for taking time to complete this training. Understanding and embracing your role as a fiduciary supports your organization's commitment to employees' financial well-being. Your decisions impact their financial security, so let diligence, prudence, and transparency guide you each step of the way. Be the champion for your employees' best interests. If you have questions or wish to know more, reach out to us by using the QR code or by clicking on the link in the gray section directly beneath this video on the YouTube channel. Thank you again for your dedicated service to your organization's employees.